Is it possible for a series to feel both refreshing while also giving off the impression it's trying to disappear up its own rectal cavity by pandering exclusively to the worst sort of otaku audience? That it can be both visually engaging, having a decent story and setting, but lacks so much in the character department that it relies on cheap fan service to reel in viewers? Don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for that, and the average specimen of the target demographic would happily take that anytime. But I'm not the average horny teenager delving deep into yuri anime for fetishistic shipping fuel. I'm just a jaded guy who spends way too much time watching these sort of shows to decide if I can recommend them to others to waste theirs. So let's take a look at Assault Lily Bouquet today, and decide if it is such a time waster, or not. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content from me. I hear that helps if I put it earlier in the video. We'll see. So, Assault Lily Bouquet. This is a pretty straightforward plot that tends to deal more in themes and character arcs than a story to follow, as really not much changes from the status quo from the series' introduction. We have our main girl, Riri, which sounds like the English version of Lily, and that just so happens to be the literary symbol and namesake for lesbian manga and novels in Japanese culture. Hitting that one on the nose a bit hard, but it's just getting started. So as I was saying, Riri's our main girl, and she goes on after being saved from a monster attack to join a school training lilies. Teenage girls wielding massive impractical weapons imbued with magical power that they alone have to fight monsters called Huge. These lilies live in dorms at their schools, which double as a sanctuary for them to live in as they see fit. And that metaphor is starting to feel like a bit of a stretch at this point, but don't worry, it's still not done. As soon as she arrives at the school, she meets the girl who saved her, Yu, and she wishes to get closer to her. Those two and another end up fighting an escaped test subject Huge, which really fucks up because she didn't read the manual on her magic girl weapon. But lucky for her, she gets her hero to help her out and impresses everyone by saving the day in the other girl's life, earning her a lifelong simp. From there, Riri tries to become the protege of her idol, Yu, who's the secondary main character of the story. The relationship is called, sorry for my German here, but a Schutzengel pledge. Basically, a younger Lily learns from an older Lily, becoming her guardian, and it's portrayed as a big sister, little sister dynamic. That is until you notice the longing stares into each other's eyes and the sycophantic obsession. Eventually, Riri earns Yuyu's trust and the two make such a pledge, leading to their ship name around school being... oh god. Yuri. Sorry, just trying to shake off the concussion from the undertones smashing me over the head this much. Anyway, Yu is basically damaged goods since her special power is going nuts on a battlefield, and she accidentally killed her Schutzengel. Or at least she believes she did. Unable to forgive herself, she becomes emotionally distant, and it's up to Riri to close that distance. There's a ton more characters, all obnoxiously quirky, but the main thing is about Riri and Yuyu's relationship. The rest of them are basically just backup in battle and a supporting cast for them at school, just to create humor and such. So yeah, not a ton really going on. The series suffers from some tonal whiplash that makes it hard to parse. There'll be episodes on end where the entire focus is on the characters being cute, drooling over one another lesbians, like debating what to get the main girl for her birthday, or building a combat team framed like a club at their school. But then it flips the script and goes super hard into its story, where it tackles the trauma of killing someone close to you and how learning to care about another again comes into focus. In these sections, it's more your typical battle show, with the girls doing crazy acrobatics and shooting magical bullets or swinging impractical weapons at these robot-looking monsters. It's not that these two things can't exist in the same show, but when it flips between them at the drop of a hat to the point that I'm not sure what I'm going to get, it feels like the anime doesn't know what it wants to be. So how is the audience supposed to get invested if the show doesn't quite know itself? A decent through line for that at least is the characters are consistent, but that has the drawback of making them feel more out of place as half of the cast is obnoxiously serious, which clashes with the goofier moments, and the other half is too busy barely containing their desire to fondle the others that it destroys the more genuine moments. And it's not as though these characters aren't entertaining or likable. When the series is in a more laid-back mood, the over-the-top, lighthearted characters shine in a comedic sense. And that's when I enjoy seeing the girls banter or do something airheaded. For the more serious stuff, the more serious characters fit their roles well. Being angsty is somewhat justified when you feel like you killed the most important person in your life not even a year prior, and now find yourself being dragged out of your shell by someone you barely know. It's just that seeing these things blended poorly is when it becomes a turnoff, leaving me mostly lukewarm on the whole package. And that sort of leads into the whole beating the audience over the head with the Yuri subtext angle. And I'm sure people would love to argue that it symbolizes the close bond between people in traumatic situations, since they're teenage girls going to war against an alien threat and a lot of them have had fucked up pasts. But I'm not inclined to give this that much credit. Not when the characters are getting nosebleeds, insanely jealous, or playing into the Yuri private school trope popular in visual novels. One-sama this, Goki Kenyo that, while casually mentioning shit like soulmates and actual groping. That's not a metaphor at that point, it's just pandering for the sake of getting people to pick up your magical girl show by appealing to their basal instincts. And while that sounds like I'm saying it's self-evidently bad, it's not. Pandering isn't a negative in itself, but it does imply that the character, storyline, and everything else isn't appealing enough to hold the audience's attention. So it's going to appeal to the viewer's libido instead, with teenage girls fondling and swooning over one another. Oh hey look, that tonal whiplash ruining the immersion comes back around on this point. These are problems that play into one another. Either this would have been a decent serious story about magical girls and loss, or it would have been a decent Yuri comedy set in a school. But as it stands, it's tripping over itself trying to have both. Animation is one of the few things I can unequivocally compliment about this one. It looks great, especially the action scenes. Seeing the dynamic camera work, really nice transitions and impacts on hits, shows some really solid direction from both the director and animation director on getting things to look nice and be paced well. I hit on this during my season preview, which, look at that. Suddenly a card appeared in the top right corner. Check that out. But in terms of choreography, movement, and impact, Shaft knows what to do. In fact, they even nailed the CG to the point that the CG models and fights aren't horribly out of place, which is becoming one of the more annoying crutches in the industry as of late, relying on the relative ease CG offers for animation to do bigger fights, but showcasing the often jarring animation the models have, as it doesn't match the rest of the series. Given Shaft's previous body of work, you know, with one of the best magical girl franchises, and enough overt sexual dialogue packed into visual metaphor through Bakemonogatari, the series isn't just a natural extension, it's almost expected. Their particular sense of humor with cutaways and pacing for visual comedy is one of the saving graces for the bulk of this anime. If not for how they show these jokes or lighthearted moments, it would make most of the episodes drag endlessly. Because, as I mentioned, this show can't really decide if it wants to be a super serious character study or slice of life Yuri comedy from episode to episode. So looking at it, at least the studio knows how to do both well. I guess if it comes down to it, should you check out Assault Lily Bouquet? That's a hard one to say. On paper, this series has a lot to like. Hell, even watching the show, there's a lot to really enjoy. From the nice looking action scenes to the somewhat endearing characters interacting. But it's on the larger scale that I have a hard time with this one. It lacks the cohesion to tie the sillier stuff and more serious stuff together, making it feel like two separate series trying to inhabit the same show. And that's a turnoff for me. If you enjoy Yuri's subtext so overt it's practically plain text, or want a decent modern magical girl series with good action, it's worth a look. But I wouldn't expect too much out of it. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and I know you already subscribed, but double check that just in case. You can also join my Discord with a link down in the description, and if you really like the content I'm putting out, you can support me by joining my Patreon. Thanks for watching.